Wow, just finished this section and it's packed. From the clever resolution of the Fumaguan trap, digging tunnels to capture enemies, genius, to the massive leap of introducing currency, my head is spinning. It's fascinating watching the tribe grapple with this huge shift from communal sharing to private ownership and wages. The initial panic and confusion felt so real, but seeing characters like Shang explain the benefits, and even that sharp woman suggesting a specialized butcher, shows how quickly they adapt. Plus, Shu Da already sniffing out business opportunities, selling cooked rabbit meat in Ruyang. Classic. I love seeing the MC's vision extend beyond survival to building a real economy and advancing tech like that incredible pattern-weaving loom. And that ending. Sweet stalks causing a frenzy in Luoyang. They sound suspiciously like sugarcane or sorghum. I have a feeling this discovery is going to be massive for the tribe. What exactly are they? And what will the MC do with this potential gold mine? Can't wait to find out. Brilliant village design sprang into your mind, somewhat like the ancient walled residential blocks, and also a bit like those old-style gated apartment complexes. The key wasn't the appearance, but the structure. A surrounding wall, a single, main gate, solid as a fortress. The village you envisioned was this sort of arrangement. Houses lined up in rows, leaving a few paths, with the outer perimeter formed by the houses themselves, or an additional wall as a defensive fortification, ultimately leaving just one gateway opening, convenient for checking. For coming and going. This layout was more than enough to fend off small wild beasts and pretty effective at blocking outside intruders. Most importantly, it could keep the entire village, young and old, enclosed within one area, making it convenient for you to manage them and offer solicitude. As for the scale, it didn't need to be too large. One one village, could fit about 100 households, which was about right. The location? Naturally, settle near water. Being close to the canal was essential. After all, the crops in the fields needed water too, didn't they? Wait, a flash of inspiration struck you. There was an even slicker move. Dig an artificial river directly. Then have all the villages strung along both banks like candied haws on a stick. Building houses and walls. Whether firing bricks or using rammed earth, required earth, right? Where would the earth come from? Isn't that convenient? Digging a river. On flat land, the excavated earth could be used directly for building houses. 2 villages would be responsible for one section of the river. By the time the houses were more or less built, the moat at their doorstep would be completed simultaneously, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, simply perfect. Afterward, led a few small irrigation channels from the artificial river into the farmland. Hey, doing this could even establish an inland waterway network. Although the river wouldn't be large enough to handle aircraft carriers, it would definitely be sufficient for running small cargo boats, poling bamboo rafts, and the like. Various merchants could then paddle their small boats, going door to door peddling their wares. Even if the transaction volume wasn't huge, it was still much better than the villagers trekking over mountains and ridges on a long journey to the city market fair. For villagers living far away, a trip to the city and back consumed a whole. Even buying a single spring onion meant wasting a whole day's effort. Such a waste. With the idea settled, you rapidly turned this grand blueprint into a concrete plan. Luoyang Prefecture would continue birthing. No. Sending out population this year, though the territory would remain under Luoyang Prefecture's administration. The artificial river would run east-west, about 10 meters wide and 4 or 5 meters deep. Villages would work in pairs, each pair digging the half in front of their own area, using the excavated earth on the spot for building houses and walls. The starting point? Just extend eastward from the existing canal beside the Luoyang River. Initially, don't commit too many people. The land around the city still needed farming. Your initial goal: establish 10 villages to the east first, 5 on each bank of the river, with 100 households per village, totaling 1,000 households. This amount of manpower wanting to quickly dig the river and build villages was indeed a bit tight. It would still need help from the old hands back in the city. Of course, you certainly wouldn't skimp on this investment. You were sowing now. But what you'd reap in the future would be mountains of gold and silver. Well, at least mountains of grain. Besides, digging a river on flat land meant there wouldn't be many paddy fields. If rice couldn't be grown, then grow wheat, corn, or sorghum. Perfect. This could also boost the Han tribe's wheat cultivation industry. Not enough manpower? Mobilize. Those newly arrived folks from outside tribes too. Pay wages, provide tools, all expenses covered by the prefecture. With a grand wave of your hand, you projected quite the boss-like air. You promptly handed off this grand pioneering plan to Da Shu, telling him to take charge of this project this year. Right, you added. There must be bridges over the river, and they have to be arch bridges, the kind that boats can pass under. Building bridges in water with the Han tribe's current technology was incredibly difficult. But you had a clever trick up your sleeve. Build the bridge on dry land first. Construct the bridge on level ground, then let the water flow under it. Without the currents causing trouble, even a complex bridge was no problem at all, Chief. Da Shu listened, stunned, and asked cautiously, "This task of expanding villages eastward, are there any specific requirements? For instance, when is it considered complete? How many villages need to be established? How far does the river need to be dug?" You pondered for a moment, then casually tossed out a sentence that nearly made Da Shu's jaw drop to the floor. "That depends on your ability," you patted his shoulder. "If you're capable enough, then dig it all the way to the Rushui River for me. Use this artificial river to connect our Han tribe's 3 prefectures into one. When that time comes, I'll credit you with first-class honors." Da Shu was petrified on the spot, his expression frozen, like a statue contemplating the meaning of life. From Luoyang Prefecture to Hanyang Prefecture, it took 7 or 8 days just to walk, over 100 kilometers. Dig a river over 100 kilometers long. Heavens. Da Shu felt his mind buzzing, felt a bit lightheaded. How terrifying was the workload? How much manpower would it require? Even if you pulled everyone from Luoyang Prefecture over to fill the trench, it wouldn't be enough to reach the Rushui River. This task was simply asking for his life. Seeing the look of silent suffering on Da Shu's face, you couldn't help but chuckle, and quickly reassured him, "Don't panic, don't panic. It's being dug in sections. It's not like I'm asking your prefecture to do it all. Hanyang Prefecture hasn't sorted out its new county town yet. They won't be free for another 2 years. Luoyang Prefecture also needs a year to recover. For this year, you just work on your part first. After a year or 2, I'll have those other 2 prefectures start digging from their ends too. The 3 of us will handle different sections, working from both ends towards the middle, and we'll connect it eventually. What are you afraid of? I haven't set a deadline. Do as much work as your manpower allows. Just get started." Hearing you say this, Da Shu's heart, which had leaped into his throat, finally settled back down. Thank heavens he wasn't expected to shoulder this task worthy of the foolish old man moving the mountains all by himself. Otherwise, he truly feared he wouldn't live to see the day the waterway was completed. Having sorted out the matter of village construction, only the second objective of your trip remained: to build a dedicated shipyard here in Luoyang Prefecture. Luoyang River was wide, a full 100 meters across. Upstream, it connected to the Great Marsh. Downstream, it flowed into the Jinsha River, and past the Wu Gorge, it ran towards that mysterious land to the southeast. Regarding that vast unknown territory, the Han tribe remained a complete blank. Where did the southern tribes actually emerge from? Why did they tirelessly migrate north? How many people were still there? How many tribes? Was there a more advanced civilization? Even one practicing slash and burn farming like the John tribe would do. You mused inwardly. If there really were quite a few tribes to the southeast that understood farming, then their population certainly wouldn't be small. And population was precisely what you, or rather the Han tribe, lacked most as a strategic resource. Of course, land was too. Although given the Han tribe's current muscle, it wasn't yet strong enough to go plant its flag and claim territory, Sending a fleet downriver first to scout things out downstream was always a good idea. Get a feel for things, see the local customs and conditions, gather geographical, hydrological, and climatic information, and do the preparatory work for future grand development. There was nothing wrong with this line of thinking. And to have an inland river fleet capable of handling various unexpected situations, a dedicated shipyard was an indispensable asset. All right, running boats on inland rivers, you know the drill. The first priority is a shallow draft. Make the hull bottom as flat as possible. Why? River channels vary in depth, and who knows what hazards lurk beneath the water. If the draft is too deep, you'll be performing an impromptu grounding in minutes. Secondly, the hull sides can't be too high. The technical term is low freeboard. The part above the waterline should be lower. About a meter off the water is enough. Think about it. The water under the boat isn't that deep to begin with. If you stack a 3-story villa on top, the center of gravity will be unstable. One fierce gust of wind, and you're guaranteed a free capsizing experience. As for the bow and stern, should they be pointed, square, or rounded? Hey, the waves don't get big on inland rivers, so it doesn't make much difference. Whatever works. Of course, these are minor details. The big move you've been planning this time is to cobble together paddle sailboats. The main propulsion will rely on sails, but when facing headwinds or countercurrents, you stick out your arms. No. Stick out the oars and everyone chants and rows together. Considering that the tribespeople currently don't even recognize the character for sail, let alone know how to operate one, you thoughtfully decided that the first generation of sailboats must use Chinese junk sails. The advantages? Simple and effective, easy to learn and master, foolproof. These sails generally come in 2 types. The kind passed down by our ancestors is mostly the fore and aft junk sail. Even if you haven't seen a real one, they look familiar from historical dramas. It's that vertical rectangular type, usually with double-layered canvas, stiffened inside, with bamboo battens kind of like a window blind. The benefit is that it's sturdy and easy to adjust for direction. How to use it? It's like raising a flag. Stand below and heave-ho, pulling the sail up. The downside is that the boat might be less maneuverable, a bit like it can only go straight. Later Western sailboats, on the other hand, mostly used square-rigged soft sails. A single mast would have several horizontal spars tied to it, and the canvas was divided into several sections, limp with no bamboo battens inside. Operating them, a real pain. Sailors had to clamber up and down the mast like monkeys, incredibly dangerous. Anyone who's seen Pirates of the Caribbean understands. However, despite the trouble, those sails could really squeeze every bit of power out of the wind. With mainsails, foresails, mizzen sails, jibs, the whole combination working together, the boat could perform tricks, even tacking against the wind in a Z pattern, the legendary snaking maneuver. But this setup is far too complex. It makes even you dizzy just looking at it, let alone expecting the tribespeople who've barely seen any boats at all to handle it. So, for now, it's best to stick to our ancestors' junk sails and get the hang of it first. There's another issue. These junk sails, if they encounter a headwind or head current, are very likely to just stall out or even get pushed backward by the current. Therefore, the boats must be equipped with sculling oars and regular oars as backup engines. When push comes to shove, you still have to rely on muscle power. Considering these boats need to handle themselves on the wide river, their size naturally can't be small. You directly copied, or borrowed the dimensions of inland river gunboats from the early days of the PRC in your past life, then widened them slightly, based on the actual situation. The final decision. The first-generation warship. No, the first-generation sailboat would be 20 meters long and 6 meters wide. What does that mean in practical terms? Placed on the ground, it's about as wide as 2 single-story houses, and as long as 6. A mobile, elongated platform. Honestly, proper gunboats built for speed wouldn't be made this beamy. It's a rule of thumb in shipbuilding. The larger the length-to-beam ratio, the slimmer the hull, and the faster the speed. That's physics for you. Skinny things move faster. Modern warships generally have a length-to-beam ratio around 8, balancing various performance aspects. During World War II, it was even more extreme. For speed and aircraft runways, ratios soared to 12 or 13 times. They had to turn carefully, terrified of flipping themselves over, utterly insane. But the 20 meters long by 6 meters wide you decided on gives a length-to-beam ratio of just over 3. The speed definitely won't be great. Compared to certain historical legends, though, it's not considered slow. It's said, Zheng He's great treasure. Ships were 120, 130 meters long and over 60 meters wide, with a length-to-beam ratio not even reaching 2. Practically a giant wooden tub floating on water. It would be strange if it could go fast, but they were truly enormous. The deck was bigger than a football field. To improve the pitiful speed as much as possible, and also for better handling, you decided to give the boat a rounded bow, while designing the stern as a semi-tunnel stern with a flat transom. A rounded bow doesn't pierce waves as well as a pointed one, but since we're sticking to the river, there's no need to fight ocean waves. A square bow, on the other hand, creates too much drag. So a rounded bow is most suitable, of course just relatively rounded. The tunnel-style flat stern offers many benefits. Firstly, the rear end is flat and open, allowing a large rudder to be installed right in the middle, with space on either side for a sculling oar each, adding auxiliary power. Secondly, when going against the current, this shape increases the water resistance on the stern, creating a braking effect similar to preventing rollback on an uphill slope. Brilliant. For this first Han tribe sailboat, you really agonized over the details, accumulating a thick stack of pencil sketches alone. Although they were crooked, drawings worthy of a soul painter, internet slang for hilariously bad art, at least you could understand them, right? Charging into Liuyang Prefecture this time, clutching the blueprints, was driven by the determination to get this precious project of yours launched sooner rather than later. Considering the boat isn't exceptionally huge, there's no need to go through the trouble of digging a wet dock. Just mark out a piece of land on the bank and build a shipyard workshop. The boat would be built on shore, and then everyone would chant, "Heave ho," and push it directly into the water. To speed things up, you really spared no expense this time, no longer scrimping and saving the tribe's pitiful iron production. Special authorization. Iron nails can be used for shipbuilding. Not only iron nails, but accompanying steel tools. Anchors and the like must also receive priority supply here. The shipyard would be located by the river, occupying an area about the size of a market district. Why so much space? Just building boats isn't enough. You also need room to store timber. Freshly cut wet wood can't be used directly. It must be placed in a ventilated area and properly air-dried for at least a year before use. This process is called seasoning the wood. At the same time, a large row of wind-powered sawmills needed to be built, relying on the wind provided by nature, whirring away to saw logs into planks. Additionally, a small blacksmith shop would be included. Although there was no blast furnace for smelting iron, setting up a power hammer was feasible. It could bang and hammer away, making some iron nails and repairing tools, sufficient for the needs. A compact but fully equipped shipbuilding base, its prototype was already taking shape. This new shipyard market district was planned out clearly. Timber storage area, blacksmith shop, wind-powered sawmills, shipbuilding docks, the 4 main components, all set. Of course, right now it was just a blueprint lying on paper. Tixing. It to spring up from the ground would likely take another year or so. But you weren't worried at all. For major undertakings like this, it was best to start early. The longer the delay, the more troublesome it became. Especially this policy of sailing afar to explore the unknown. Its future impact on the Han tribe was substantial and couldn't be treated lightly. Once again, you placed this heavy responsibility on Dashu's shoulders, telling him to quickly organize manpower, Gather supplies and funds and recruit or transfer suitable craftsmen. For now, a few minor officials could be sent to survey the site, then have people level the ground, and the necessary equipment should also be prepared in advance. Besides the major matter of the shipyard, Dashu had another urgent task: send people to the market to promote the use of scales. Those merchants needed to learn how to use this device as soon as possible. Stop selling everything by the piece. How could that be right? With scales, weight units had to be standardized quickly to regulate the market. You made do for the night, and early the next morning, just as the sky was beginning to lighten, you excitedly went to a small, temporarily erected jetty by the river to wait. What were you waiting for? Naturally, the sweet stalks sent by the Ling tribe. Yesterday, you had already checked the bundle Dashu left for you. It indeed tasted just like the sweet stalks from your memory, and the sweetness was adequate. It was just that when the Ling tribe delivered them, they had cut off the tops and bottoms, so you couldn't confirm if this thing was really the sorghum you knew. Mainly, they had cut off the head at the top. That's where it flowered and bore fruit. So, could these sweet stalks actually produce enough sorghum grain? Would the yield be sufficient to support your grand brewing venture? It was completely unknown right now. However, even if it couldn't produce grain, relying solely on those sweet stalks, it had to be planted. If you couldn't brew alcohol, using it for sugar production was also a golden path to wealth. This business was a guaranteed win. Just as your mind was wandering, on the river surface to the northeast, the Ling tribe's armada of bamboo rafts floated over majestically. Because the rafts had limited carrying capacity, they had dispatched a huge raft formation just to carry a bit more cargo. Seeing this formation, you paused for a moment, turned your head, and asked the honest Dashu beside you, "Didn't they ever think of buying a few boats from us? Or did you not sell any to them?" Dashu scratched his head. "They did ask, but didn't explicitly say they wanted to buy. I also didn't know if you, Chief, would allow selling them, or what price would be appropriate. Later they didn't mention it again, so I didn't think much of it." "Sell? Why wouldn't we sell?" Upon hearing this, your eyes lit up, your business radar instantly activated. "Didn't you say they earned quite a bit of money from us? Then we must find a way to earn it back." "Just sell the previous type. 8 meters long, 3 meters wide, capable of fitting 20 people at once. Modify it slightly. Add a sculling oar at the back." As for the price, you began calculating mentally, counting on your fingers. 10 people to build such a boat takes about 10 days. Labor costs alone are 100 units. Wood has to be acquired from the logging team, processed into planks plus iron nails, waterproof paint and whatnot. The cost comes out to roughly 500 units. How about this? You waved your hand grandly, quite generously. Round it up to 1,000 units per boat. List it at the market, sell it to them. Compared to perishable goods that were gone once sold, big-ticket items like carts and boats were the real source of profit growth. You had to understand, in the Han tribe, where 3 or 4 cents could buy a full meal, and the average monthly wage was only 30 units, spending 1,000 units on a small, basic boat required saving without eating or drinking for 3 or 4 years. It was definitely a luxury item. Having finally caught a big customer like the Ling tribe, more money than sent, financially strong and having a need, if you didn't ruthlessly rip off, serve them well, you'd feel bad about it. Listening to your calculations, Dashu was a bit bewildered. The cost clearly came out to only around 500, so how could the chief double it without batting an eye? But on second thought, this was generating revenue for the tribe, and it was outsiders being ripped off, so there was nothing wrong with it. Dashu no longer hesitated, immediately turned his head and whispered a few words to a minor official beside him, telling him to go list the boats for sale right away. But just as you two were talking, you added another blow. "Remember now, tribe members pay the same price." "Huh?" Dashu nearly bit his tongue, suspecting he'd misheard. "Chief, selling to our own people? Also at this price?" "What else?" you said reasonably. If we don't make a profit, how do we support the shipyard and the workers? If we don't make a profit, how do we develop new boats? If we don't make a profit, where does the workers' motivation come from? Do you think money grows on trees? Besides, you lowered your voice. Do you think apart from those nouveaux riches from the Ling tribe, how many people in our own tribe can actually fork out 1,000 units to buy a boat? And what would they use the boat for after buying it? So you simply won't sell many of these boats to our own people anyway. Selling it so expensively, of course, no one can afford it. Dashu couldn't help muttering under his breath. But you sharply caught it. What? You looked at him with a smile. Not convinced. Think I'm not favoring our own people? No, not at all. It wasn't me. I didn't say anything. Dashu quickly issued a triple denial. I'm stating facts. You dropped the smile and began to test Dashu. Setting the price too low isn't good for long-term development. The workers need to profit. But if the price is too high, few people will buy, and you still won't make money. Tell me, what should be done? Also, you think I haven't taken care of our own people, right? Then think of a way for me. How can we solve both these problems at once? This time Dashu learned his lesson, didn't speak, just shook his head. He truly had no solution. Firstly, the currency had just been issued, and everyone lacked experience in business. Secondly, solving two seemingly contradictory problems simultaneously, he really couldn't figure out how to both make money and let his own people benefit. Fortunately, you weren't really expecting him to come up with some brilliant plan. You didn't keep him waiting and directly announced the answer. These small boats at 1,000 units each. Indeed, few people can afford them. No family has that much spare cash. But we can't lower the price, so what do? We can sell boats to outsiders and rent boats internally. Your eyes glinted with wisdom and cunning commerce. Let's take Shuda's example this month. Even if he could muster 1,000 units, buying the boat would bankrupt him, so he can't afford it either. But I rented the boat to him. 60 units a month, equivalent to 2 people's wages. Calculated this way, doesn't it feel less painful? He's now renting 2 boats, shuttling goods daily from Hanyang City to his Ruyang prefecture. Just making a small profit from the price difference earns him more than 4 people's wages. Understand now? Our official shipyard builds these boats. Selling them directly might leave us stuck with them. But what about renting them out? 60 units a month for those merchants wanting to get into transport. They can grit their teeth and accept it. It might seem like we're not earning much, but calculate it. 14 months a year, the rent alone brings back 840 units. Come the second year, this second-hand boat used for a year, we can lower the price to 800 units and continue renting it out. Still 60 units a month. Over 2 years, just the rent plus the selling price, if sold in the second year, or continuing to collect rent, brings in nearly 1,700 units. Isn't that much more profitable than selling directly for 1,000? By the third year, this boat used for 2 years, we can discount it further, say, sell it off for 500 units. Someone will eventually take it off our hands. This way, although the timeline is stretched a bit, the money we earn is 2 or 3 times more than selling it directly. See, this way, we can both earn more money and solve the problem of most tribespeople being unable to afford boats. From the perspective of the entire tribe, it also promotes water transport development, accelerates goods circulation, and stimulates economic growth. Killing multiple birds with one stone, simply perfect. You rattled off calculations and analysis, leaving Dashu completely stunned. His eyes widened, mouth slightly agape, as if encountering the concept of business for the first time. Good grief, it could be played like this? How on earth did the chief's brain work? This method seemed genuinely feasible. After all, even he himself could afford a monthly rent of 60 units. It didn't seem like much money, but going around in circles, the total amount spent ended up being even more than buying a new boat. This was simply brilliant. While you and Dashu were deep in conversation by the jetty, the Ling tribe's bamboo raft armada had already docked. The people on the raft spotted your group of officials dressed in black, wide-sleeved long robes from afar. They were used to it, the standard attire for Han tribe officials, those sleeves so wide they could flap like wings. Ordinary folks didn't get such treatment. In their view, what else could these officials be doing standing here? Weren't they just waiting to collect taxes? Honestly, the Ling people had always found it a bit baffling. They were the ones painstakingly transporting goods to the Han tribe's doorstep, saving the Han tribe a lot of trouble. So why did they end up having to pay the Han tribe a passage fee? But the weak couldn't fight the strong. The Han tribe had the muscle, so they could only hold their noses and accept it. Fortunately, after paying the tax, they could still earn a little profit. The business tax the Han tribe collected from the Ling tribe was roughly divided into 3 types. One was the customs duty, calculated per cart or per boat. Once entering Han territory, a certain amount had to be paid based on the cargo being transported. The other 2 types were based on the category of goods such as salt, iron, grain, livestock, cloth, handicrafts, fresh produce, etc. The former bulk commodities weren't very relevant to the Ling tribe. They mainly paid the handicraft tax for bamboo weaving, etc., and the fresh produce tax for sweet stalks, etc. The Ling people disembarked from the rafts. Working in pairs, one stabilized the raft while the other laboriously hauled goods ashore. The jetty wasn't far from the market, just cross that patch of farmland. The goods had to be transported by handcart, but only after paying the tax and obtaining an entry ticket did one qualify to rent the market's handcarts. Today, however, the Ling tribe's leader for this trip, a man named Xiao Hui, caught sight of you standing at the very front and found you somewhat familiar, as if he'd seen you somewhere before. So he mustered his courage, stepped forward, cupped his hands in greeting, mimicking the Han tribe's etiquette. "Gentlemen, why are you here so early today? Is there some matter?" You didn't reply, merely gave Dashu a look. Dashu understood immediately and stepped forward. "Indeed, we have business with you today. 3 important matters, in fact. All quite important for your Ling tribe." Dashu cleared, his throat adopting an official tone. Oh, Xiao He's heart sank. He sensed trouble. The team leaders for selling goods weren't the same person every day, so how could it be so coincidental that something happened right when he was on duty? "May I ask what matters Lord Lin wishes to discuss?" Hey, don't be nervous. None of it is bad news," Dashu reassured him. "I'll briefly tell you first, and you can relay it to your chief when you return. First, our Han tribe has recently developed a device for measuring weight called a scale. In the future, many goods can be sold by weight by Jin and Liang, no longer needing the hassle of selling by the piece or unit. Using scales to calculate weight is fair to both buyer and seller. Later, our officials will be giving demonstrations in the market. You can buy scales from them there. Second, starting today, our Han tribe is selling boats, the kind you often see hand-paddled boats 8 meters long, 3 meters wide, capable of holding about 20 people. They are now clearly priced at 1,000 units each. If you want to buy, you can come trade at any time." "What? 1,000 units each?" Hearing the price, Xiao He's eyes nearly popped out, and he exploded on the spot. "That's way too expensive. Who can afford that? Can it be cheaper? Our Ling tribe doesn't have much money either." "This price is the price. If you want to buy, it cannot be reduced," Dashu said, expression unchanged, strictly following your instructions. "If you think it's expensive and want a cheaper option, there's only one way. Join our Han tribe. Only by becoming one of us do you qualify to rent boats. Renting costs only 60 units a month." "Huh? We can rent boats too?" Xiao He paused, then quickly started counting on his fingers. 60 units a month. A month is 30 days, right? That's only 2 units a day. I sell 1 sweet stalk for 5 when selling just 40 sweet stalks a day covers the rent. This actually doesn't seem like much. Xiao He's calculations were quick. Befitting a team leader, his mind worked fast. But after figuring it out, he immediately became unhappy again. "Hey, then why don't you just rent them directly to us? Why must our Ling tribe buy them? Compared to buying, renting was clearly much more cost-effective. Now it was Dashu's turn to be troubled. You had just brought up the renting idea, and he hadn't grasped many details, like whether outsiders could rent. He could only cast a pleading look your way. You stepped forward, calm and composed, and spoke. Our boats are only rented to citizens holding legal Han tribe household registration. Why? You asked Xiao He rhetorically. Because our own people have houses and land here, family and neighbors, noble rank and status. They can't run away. But you outsiders are different. If I rent a boat to you, and you paddle away and disappear, without a trace, what if you don't come back? Wouldn't I suffer a huge loss? As soon as these words were spoken, both Dashu and Xiao Hu were rendered speechless. It was simply too reasonable, almost irrefutable. The internal mutual responsibility system implemented by the Han tribe meant that if one family committed a crime, neighbors who didn't report or stop it were all implicated. Even if someone committed a crime impulsively and fled, if their family didn't persuade them to surrender, they'd suffer the consequences together. Under such high-pressure policies, who would dare rent a boat and run off? It was likely safe even without a deposit. But for outsiders, even if you collected a deposit, if they really fled, where would you go to catch them? After hearing this, Dashu nodded inwardly, thinking the chief was indeed thorough. Xiao He, on the other hand, looked like he had swallowed a fly. He wasn't someone who could make major decisions anyway, and buying a boat was certainly not up to him. Thus, he decisively employed the delaying tactic. The money for buying a boat is too much. I can't make the decision. I need to report this back to our chief and let them decide. Let's talk about the third matter first. What's the third thing? This time, before Dashu could speak, you took over, because this third matter was what concerned you most. The third matter concerns these sweet stalks you're selling. You looked at Xiao He, your tone relaxed. Don't be nervous, we don't intend to stop you from selling sweet stalks. I just wanted to ask, the part you cut off the top of the sweet stalk, does it grow a kind of red rice? Could you bring some for me to see? Hearing this, Xiao He's heart first tightened, thinking the Han tribe resented their successful sweet stalk business and wanted to cut off their source of income. But then your words took a turn, unexpectedly asking about that insignificant red rice. Xiao He's eyes narrowed instantly. He remembered clearly that their chief had specifically cut off and stored those red grains, saying they were of great, seemingly intending to use this red rice as a bargaining chip to negotiate some terms with the Han tribe. He wasn't sure about the specifics, but the chief had instructed that if the Han tribe asked, they should confirm its existence, but state that if they wanted it, the Han tribe's chief must come personally to negotiate. Thinking of this, Xiao He felt a wave of satisfaction. Their Ling tribe finally had something that the powerful Han tribe valued. That red rice, indeed we have it, quite a lot too. Xiao He straightened his back, speaking with a hint of pride. However, our chief said, if you want this red rice, you must ask the Han tribe's chief to come over personally to discuss it. Our chief has something to say to him. Hearing Xiao He's words, you and Dashu exchanged glances, both seeing a hint of a smile in the other's eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. Dashu cleared his throat and introduced you to Xiao. Hidi, this is our Han tribe's chief. Whatever your chief wants to discuss, just have him come over himself. Also bring that red rice. We don't like empty talk. For the sake of the red rice, whatever you want to discuss, as long as it's not too unreasonable, we will seriously consider it. Xiao He was stunned upon hearing this. After all this time, the young man who had just been haggling with him was actually the legendary chief of the Han tribe. A man's reputation precedes him, like the shadow of a tree. Simply stating your title, Chief of the Han tribe, carried immense weight. It wasn't that you looked particularly fierce or menacing, but rather the behemoth you represented, the Han tribe, technologically advanced and populous. The chief of such a tribe could decide the fates of many with a single sentence. It was no exaggeration to say his word was law. Upon learning your true identity, Xiao He immediately shed his earlier somewhat boisterous attitude, becoming utterly respectful. He clasped his fists together again and gave you a deep bow. At the same time, realization dawned on him. No wonder he seemed familiar earlier. Of course, he was familiar. Weren't the coins issued by the Han tribe printed with this very man's portrait? It was just that his current attire was different from the one on the coin. If he were wearing those majestic ceremonial robes and the flat-topped crown and perhaps looked a little older, he would have been instantly recognizable. Han Chi, chief, greetings. Xiao He was so nervous his tongue nearly tied itself in knots. I will definitely report these matters back to our chief exactly as you've said, and have him bring the red rice over tomorrow to speak with you personally. Let's leave it at that. You can head over to the market now. You responded lightly, waved your hand, and dismissed the man, who was so nervous he almost started walking with his arms and legs on the same side. Xiao He looked as if he'd received a pardon, bowed to you again, then turned and scurried away. Like a wisp of smoke, terrified you might ask him something else. Having dealt with the Ling tribe and confirmed the existence of sorghum rice, red rice, a heavy weight lifted from your heart. You were in a good mood, strolling along the riverbank with Dashu for a while, admiring the lush green, thriving rice paddies. Afterward, you ambled over to the city market, found a stall, and each slurped down a bowl of plain congee with a few bites of pickled vegetables, taking care of breakfast. Fed and watered, the two of you continued your inspection tour around Liuyang Prefecture. The Han tribe's 3 existing prefectures each had their own specialty. Hanyang Prefecture was the leader in textiles and metallurgy. Ruyang Prefecture's sericulture, though newly started, was on the right track. And Liuyang Prefecture firmly controlled the Han tribe's lifeblood industry, papermaking. The two of you walked into the newly built paper mill, and a wave of heat mixed with the distinct smell of paper pulp hit you. It was early summer, but the papermaking workshop felt like a steam basket, filled with lingering steam. Many men were working shirtless, their trouser legs rolled up, sweating profusely. There was nothing to be done. The heated platform used for drying the paper was simply too effective. It was tolerable in winter, but in summer it was practically hell on earth. Currently, the paper mill's roll paper production lines had been expanded to 20. Each line had 7 or 8 people, each responsible for their specific task. Some were dedicated to pedaling to provide power. Some constantly watched the fire under the drying bed, ensuring it was strong enough. Others added pulp and fresh water to the vat at the front, continuously stirring and adjusting to guarantee the pulp consistency was just right. The pulp went through a series of processes, finally becoming finished rolls of paper on the winding frames. Afterward, these large rolls just needed to be unfurled and cut into the required sizes to be ready for use. However, Liuyang Prefecture's paper industry had always relied on a type of pulp tree from the southern mountains for its raw material. But as more production lines opened and output increased, the pulp trees on the mountain were becoming insufficient to meet demand. If production continued at this rate, it was estimated that they would soon have to halt operations due to a lack of raw materials. No rice to put in the pot, so to speak. Moreover, most of the paper currently produced was supplied to various government offices. Actual consumption was limited, and much of it was just piling up in warehouses, gathering dust. Considerable portion was also transported to various county towns. For what? To paper over windows. Truly a luxurious waste. But the workshops couldn't just shut down over this minor issue, could they? Since the existing pulp trees were insufficient, it was perfect timing. Use this opportunity to test the effectiveness of making paper from other materials, doing some experiments to expand future raw material sources. This time, you finalized the decision to try 3 new materials: bamboo, the waste residue left after squeezing juice from sweet stalks, and the straw left after harvesting rice. These 3 materials could theoretically all be used for papermaking. Bamboo, well, in your past life, there were numerous techniques for making paper from it. Bamboo paper and lianxi paper were renowned brands in ancient times, Books printed on them could last for centuries without deteriorating. As for making paper from sweet stalk residue, you had only heard about it. You weren't sure about the actual results and had no real confidence. It was purely a case of crossing the river by feeling for stones. Finally, making paper from straw was relatively common. Straw is yellow, and the paper produced generally retained that earthy yellow hue, hence it was also called unbleached paper, or straw paper. You recalled from your childhood how the village store wrapped pastries, the clinic wrapped pills, the Ruggiamo vendor placed under the xiaobing, and the traditional pharmacy wrapped herbs, mostly using this yellowish paper. Although the quality was a bit coarse and unsuitable for writing, in an era without plastic bags, using it as wrapping paper made it an absolutely excellent and inexpensive item. You also remembered visiting relatives during the new year as a child. Gifts of pastries were always wrapped squarely in several packets of this big yellow paper, stacked together, with a piece of red paper bearing auspicious words pasted on top, then tied neatly with thin hemp string, ready to be carried off. In those days, being able to bring such a stack of pastries when visiting relatives was definitely something that gave one great face. The elders would beam with joy upon seeing it. As for the specific production method, given the Han tribe's existing papermaking technology, as long as the initial pulping stage was managed correctly, the subsequent processes could mostly follow the existing production line. For straw papermaking, to maximize efficiency, you planned to do it this way. First, chop the straw finely with a fodder knife, ka-cha, then rinse it several times with clean water, splash, splash, to remove impurities. Next, soak it in lime water for a day to let it fully absorb moisture. After softening, take it out, put it in a large pot, pour in alkaline water and boil it. Bubble, bubble. Once boiled until pulpy, take it out again, drain the water, and steam it in a pot. Huff, puff. Simply put, it was a two-pronged approach using both physical and chemical methods, vigorously breaking down the straw, destroying its fiber structure, making it soft and pulpy, essentially forcing an acceleration of the natural decomposition process. Finally, the thoroughly steamed, mushy straw would be thrown into a foot-operated trip-hammer mortar, tadui, pounded, thump, 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 into qualified dry material. The last step was to mix water into this dry material, dilute and stir it, resulting in a bright yellow pulp. The entire process emphasized simplicity and brute force, striving for maximum efficiency. Just as you finished assigning the new paper, material projects to several promising team leaders under you, instructing them to pause production of the existing pulp paper and focus on tackling these new ventures, the sky began to darken. The Ling tribe members, who had been busy at the market all day, started packing up their things with clangs and bangs, preparing to head home. They needed to paddle their rafts a good distance down the river before it got completely dark. Hurry. Up faster, or you won't make it back for a hot meal. The team leader, Xiao He, yelled hoarsely, urging them on. Aye, right away. The crowd responded with a roar. The three matters you specifically mentioned today were all major issues for the Xie Ling tribe, making Xiao He feel as anxious as if a cat were scratching inside him. He couldn't make a decision on any of them, not to mention you had specifically asked for that red rice, which their chief treasured dearly. Xiao He didn't know what terms the chief wanted to negotiate with the Han tribe using the red rice, but he always felt that the Han tribe wasn't easy to manipulate. If that young Han chief suddenly turned hostile, their own chief far away on the lake island would be fine. But he, the messenger, would be the unlucky one. With this unsettling feeling, Xiao He paddled his raft with extra vigor, practically using all his strength. He felt like he made it back to the tribe in almost half the usual time, paddling as if pursued by ferocious beasts. Ling Yun, the chief of the Ling tribe, was standing on the shore of the lake island, eagerly waiting for the trading party to return, and even more so, for the news he desired. These sweet stalks have been selling for almost 10 days now. Hasn't that Han tribe chief noticed yet? Or Is he simply not interested in this stuff? Ling Yun stood by the shore, muttering to himself worriedly. Just then, a large, dark mass of bamboo rafts appeared on the river surface. His people were back. Chief! Chief, something big happened. Johe's raft had just touched the shore, and before he even steadied himself, he saw his chief and immediately started shouting at the top of his lungs. The Han tribe chief himself came today. He specifically asked for the red rice from our sweet stalks. I told him I couldn't make the decision and that you'd have to go talk to him personally tomorrow. Oh, Ling Yun's spirits lifted, and he rushed forward excitedly, urgently confirming. You saw the Han tribe chief with your own eyes? He personally said he wanted the red rice? That's right. It was Dashu, their Liuyang prefecture governor, who introduced him personally. And I saw the man looked quite similar to the person printed on the back of the money notes, just dressed differently. With Governor Dashu vouching for him, it can't be fake. Xiaohe nodded repeatedly, his tone firm. Good. That's good, ha 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 ha. Ling Yun rubbed his hands together excitedly. Looks like I'll have to make a trip myself tomorrow. By the way, did the Han chief say anything else? Oh, he also said that if we want to talk business with him, we have to bring the red rice. They don't like empty talk, Xiaohe quickly reported. Also, starting today, they're listing boats for sale in the market. The same kind that came here before. Small wooden boats that can carry about 20 people. They said they'd sell them to us for 1,000 units each. Additionally, they've created something called a scale, said to measure how heavy things. From now on, selling goods will require using that scale for weighing, claiming it's fair. But you have to pay for that thing. We didn't buy many today, and most folks haven't quite figured out how to use it yet. Zhuhe poured out everything like beans from a bamboo tube. Only then did Ling Yun wave him away. Having obtained this crucial information, Ling Yun stood alone by the shore, lost in thought. That Han tribe chief was truly a remarkable individual. This was Ling Yun's most direct assessment of you at that moment. Why say that? Because many things seemed strangely uncanny. Take the red rice on the sweet stalks, for instance. This thing wasn't native to the Ling tribe's lands. If not for Ling Yun's good fortune in obtaining it by chance, he wouldn't even know such rice existed. But the problem was, how did that Han tribe chief far away on the plains know that sweet stalks produced grain, and even know it was red? Simply miraculous, adding the news he just heard today, that the Han chief had invented a tool for measuring weight called a scale. And looking at the strange contraption his men brought back, Ling Yun became even more convinced of his judgment. This was definitely a godlike figure. He could create anything. Could an ordinary person do that? And then there was the even more frightening ability. The Han chief seemed to possess foresight, knowing the characteristics and uses of many things he had presumably never seen before. Terrifying. However, the more this was the case, the more excited Ling Yun felt inwardly. The thought of meeting this legendary, miraculous chief in person tomorrow made him toss and turn, unable to sleep. He finally managed to endure until the next morning. Amidst a background chorus of quacking ducks, Ling Yun got up before dawn. After tidying up briefly, he set off with his tribe's raft convoy towards the Han tribe's territory. By the time the group paddled laboriously to the Han tribe's jetty, the sky was already bright. The jetty was deserted, with only 2 or 3 minor officials responsible for collecting taxes wandering around. There was no sign of you. Ling Yun didn't feel disappointed by this. He understood clearly in his heart. The Han tribe was giving him a show of strength. Although unspoken, it was a clear message. Your Ling tribe is merely a small tribe of about 1,000 people, not yet qualified for our chief to personally welcome you. Even if you hold something we desire, don't think you can control us. Therefore, when you meet later to negotiate terms, weigh your words carefully. Don't make exorbitant demands, and think before you speak. Over by the tax collectors, someone indeed noticed the small bag of red granules weighing about 10 jin that Ling Yun had someone carry. Although they didn't know what it was, a minor official nearby, clearly having received instructions, immediately approached upon seeing the red rice. Excuse me, are you the chief of the Ling tribe? Oh, yes, I am. Ling Yun responded immediately upon seeing him. Yesterday, my tribesmen arranged for me to meet the Han chief today. May I ask where I should go to pay my respects? Our chief is waiting for you in the administrative district. Please bring the red rice and follow me, the minor official said politely, leading the way. Ling Yun quickly instructed one of his men to carry the bag of sorghum rice on a shoulder pole, and followed. The journey was unobstructed, with no inspections along the way. However, this made Ling Yun uneasy again. Did the Han tribe really not desire this red rice that much? When the official saw the red rice earlier, Ling Yun had intended to hand it over directly, but the man didn't even acknowledge it and told him to carry it himself. This was practically the second hint. We, the Han tribe, don't absolutely need this little thing from you. Be careful with your terms later. Before long, they arrived at the administrative district, still bustling with construction and echoing with banging noises. Crossing through a somewhat messy construction site, the leading official guided Ling Yun to the gate of a small, separate courtyard. The official went up to speak with the gatekeeper. These two are from the Ling tribe. This is Chief Ling, and this one is helping carry things. Our chief arranged for me to bring them here. Oh right, Chief Ling also brought the red rice. The gatekeeper nodded. Go in. The chief might be having a meal. Please have them wait in the main hall for a moment. The chief will be there shortly. Upon hearing this, the official immediately led Ling Yun and his attendant into the courtyard, seated them in the guest seats on either side of the main hall, and poured them cups of hot water. Then he left them waiting, running off to inform you that the guests had arrived and requested you come over later. And what a wait it was. Nearly an hour. Were you eating? You had practically just crawled out of bed. You leisurely washed up, dressed, waited for the servants to boil water and cook, filled your stomach with 2 bowls of hot congee, and only then guided by the minor official, did you leisurely stroll towards the main hall. Dashu wasn't with you today. You had sent him off to supervise the shipyard construction. The only person beside you was the minor official who had led the way earlier. As you stepped into the prefecture hall with measured strides, Ling Yun and his attendants, seated as guests, had nearly grown moss from waiting. Seeing the main figure finally appear, they forcibly suppressed their impatience. Ling Yun quickly stood up and bowed respectfully in greeting. His attendant mimicked the gesture, cupping his hands, though the movement wasn't quite standard and looked slightly comical. All right, dispense with the formalities. You waved dismissively, walked to the center of the room, grabbed a handful of the unhulled sorghum rice from the bag, weighed it in your hand, and went to sit in the main seat at the head of the hall. Studying the grain in your hand, you got straight to the point. You've waited quite a while, so I won't waste words. Our Han tribe needs a lot of this red rice for seeds, the kind that can sprout and grow. You should understand this, otherwise you wouldn't have thought to exchange it for benefits. State your terms. What do you want? You prepared to hear what conditions this Ling tribe chief intended to propose, reporting to the Han chief. Seeing you seated and hearing your words, Ling Yun immediately rose from his seat, walked down to the floor of the hall and bowed deeply to you again. Ling Yun has come this time with no intention of using this red rice to coerce the Han tribe. I merely wish to take this opportunity to meet the Han chief in person. As you, chief, are busy with important matters and rarely here, Ling Yun had to resort to this measure. This bag of red rice, I wish to present it to the Han chief as a token of respect, not as a transaction. Huh? You were momentarily stunned. What was happening? No conditions? These 10+ jin of seed-quality red rice just given away for free? Just to meet you? This fellow knows how to play the game. It seems his ambitions are not small. Ha 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 ha. Understanding the underlying play, you couldn't help but laugh heartily a few times. Ling Yun, is it? You are indeed clever, a resourceful fellow. I like this gift very much. I accept it. However, your tone shifted and you looked at him with interest. You just said you went to all this trouble to draw me out merely to see me in person. Now I'm here. We've met. If you have something to say, you might as well say it directly. I'm actually a bit curious now about what you really want to tell me. You wanted to see what medicine this seemingly astute tribal chief was really selling. You kneaded the sorghum grains in your hand, your mind racing. Population, sweet stalks, Ling tribe, rice paddies. Wait. A jolt ran through you, as if you'd suddenly unblocked a crucial meridian. That's right. The Ling tribe used to live by gathering water chestnuts and fishing. Only later, with the help of the Han tribe, did they start learning to cultivate rice and raise ducks. But they've only been growing rice for less than a year, counting generously. How did so many sweet sorghum stalks suddenly appear this year? Getting hauled to the Han tribe market day after day? They'd been selling them for nearly half a month, and in considerable quantities. If they were just randomly gathering wild ones, could there really be this many? Could the supply be this stable? Could they be this sweet? Nonsense, you had tasted the sweet stalks the Ling tribe sold. That sweetness, tisk tisk, definitely good enough for sugar extraction. But apart from honey and a certain miraculous tree, root nodule, you really hadn't encountered anything growing wild that was this sweet and could be cultivated reliably. What did this imply? It meant these sweet stalks they were selling were definitely not wild. They must be a variety that had been artificially selected and domesticated over a long period. But this contradicted what Ling Yun had just said about population. How many people did his tribe actually have? Where would they find the time and skill to domesticate sorghum? It must be this. Inspiration flashed in your mind. Your thoughts instantly clearing. He must have discovered other tribes nearby growing this sweet sorghum. And more than just one tribe. The sweet stalks they're selling were all bartered from other tribes. As for what they used for bartering, that was easy. Things the Ling tribe produced themselves, or salt, iron pots, cloth exchanged from the Han tribe. Any of these would be highly sought-after goods in the eyes of those primitive tribes. No worries about not being able to trade. Your speculation, while not entirely accurate, wasn't far off the mark. The story actually began last year. Last year, the Ling tribe got their first taste of the benefits of rice cultivation, learning that this thing could reliably fill bellies. What shocked them even more was that these miraculous rice seeds were discovered by you, the great chief of the Han tribe, in the marsh. This opened up a whole new world for the Ling tribe. After mastering bamboo raft technology, they began exploring deeper into the marsh, partly to capture wild ducks for domestication, and partly hoping to try their luck and see if they could find any other edible seeds. And hey, wouldn't you know it? Hard work pays off. After more than a year, they actually found other tribes cultivating crops. Some grew rice too, but their techniques and tools, compared to the Han tribes, were like the Stone Age versus the Iron Age, mostly still in a semi-wild, semi-cultivated, haphazard state. Besides rice, the crop they found most widely grown was this sweet sorghum. Sorghum is related to rice, both belonging to the grass family, so finding them together in the marsh wasn't surprising. Initially, those sorghum-growing tribes only knew the grains on top were edible and could be planted, harvested, and replanted. The stalks had a bit of sweetness, but that was all, nowhere near as cloyingly sweet as they were now. Where was the turning point? Someone took the sorghum to grow on dry land near the marsh edge. As a result, without the excessive moisture of the marshland, but receiving more sun exposure, the sorghum stalks they grew turned out, hey, much sweeter. This led to the internet-famous sweet stalks that were once sold out in the Han tribe market. After his subordinates discovered this situation, Ling Yun personally visited those shore-dwelling tribes several times for inspection. Using porcelain, white salt, and cloth exchanged from the Han tribe as door openers, Ling Yun, with his glib tongue and the halo of an advanced tribe, thrived among those tribes, treated as an honored guest wherever he went. Later, he even generously shared some farming black technology learned from the Han tribe, dazzling those tribes so much that they even proactively offered sorghum seeds in exchange. While visiting, Ling Yun also tasted their sorghum stalks. They were indeed sweet, but the problem was those tribes lacked the technology for sugar extraction. The sweetness couldn't be preserved. Their own tribes were small, they couldn't eat it all, and ultimately, they could only watch the sweet Stalks rot in the fields. Ling Yun saw this and felt anxious. This was precious sweetness, so rare in nature. Letting it go to waste like this was too regrettable. But he had no solution. Originally, the matter might have just faded away. But in Saur, early summer this year, the Han tribe suddenly implemented private ownership and monetary exchange. This jolted Ling Yun awake. Buying and selling things with money was much more convenient than the previous barter system. With money, you could buy anything. Conversely, anything could be exchanged for money. After spending a week thoroughly understanding what a wonderful thing money was, a brilliant business opportunity exploded in Ling Yun's mind. Those lakeside tribes' sweet stalks, they couldn't consume them all anyway, and leaving them would just let them rot. But the Han tribe had lots of people, a huge market. They could totally consume it all, and it was a sweet treat. In this era, lacking sugar and sweetness, there was no worry about selling it. The worry was not having enough supply. Thus, a business plan of buying sweet stalks cheap and reselling them high to the Han tribe rapidly took shape in Ling Yun's mind. The plan's implementation was smoother than imagined. The lakeside tribes had plenty of sweet stalks, and what they didn't eat usually rotted in the fields anyway. Now someone was willing to trade things for them. Only a fool wouldn't trade. The Ling tribe used just a little white salt, a few porcelain bowls, some bolts of cloth, a few iron pots, and other such luxury goods to easily secure all the sweet stalks from those tribes. They even got the other party to handle trimming the stalks to length, bundling them up, and even helping load them onto the rafts. They saved even the most time-consuming and labor-intensive costs. When these sweet stalks were transported to the Han tribe, they became an instant hit. The price wasn't high, 5 wen per stalk, about the same as a meal, affordable for everyone. Plus, it was a rare, sweet treat. These factors combined ignited the market instantly. They were sold out on the first day. People lined up on the second day. On the third day, people even started fighting to buy them. It forced the Liuyang prefecture officials to step in and maintain order. If they hadn't intervened early, the common folk might have rushed directly to the riverbank to snatch the goods. Money was made, but Ling Yun's ambition didn't stop there. What he wanted was higher status and power within the Han tribe. These sweet stalks were merely bait he used to test the Han tribe's attitude and, incidentally, attract your attention. As the chief, having figured out these connections, you basically believed what Ling Yun had said earlier. The lake island was real. The promised population was real, though belonging to others. And the source of the abundant sweet stalks was also real. This Ling Yun indeed had the ability to fulfill his promise. However, you still had one question. Since you have the ability to gather so many people and help the Han tribe secure such a large territory, why insist on joining the Han tribe? You stared into Ling Yun's eyes and asked slowly, why not gather those people yourself, rule as king over? There, be the chief of a large tribe. Isn't that better than being a prefectural governor in the Han tribe? You were probing his ambition. Of course, it was impossible for him to have no ambition. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare ask for the position of governor before even formally joining. But what you wanted to know more was whether this fellow harbored thoughts of setting up his own mountain stronghold. Ambition wasn't scary. What was scary was ambition so great it threatened the tribe's unity and stability. Hearing your question, a wry smile appeared on Ling Yun's face, and he quickly explained, Chief, you overestimate me. What I said earlier was that if the chief could make me a governor of the Han tribe, then I would have the confidence to achieve those things. Without the powerful backing of the Han tribe, relying solely on our Ling tribe of about 1,000 people, it's simply wishful thinking. First, we don't have the advanced boats like the Han tribe. Relying solely on bamboo rafts, we can't transport much, nor travel far. Second, we certainly don't have the Han tribe's abundant resources and advanced technology. Third, Ling Yun paused, his expression turning solemn. Even if I could harden my heart, abandon the lake island, Go to the mainland on the other side of the marsh and gather all tens of thousands of people along the coast. I'm afraid it wouldn't be long before morale disintegrated and everyone went their separate ways. Oh? You feigned curiosity and pressed further. Why do you think so? Isn't there strength in numbers? You continued digging, wanting to see what rationale he could offer, while secretly observing his reaction. No. Ling Yun shook his head. I've heard that the Han tribe currently has only tens of thousands of people, and even you, Chief, find it challenging to manage, needing to establish prefectures and counties. If I were to establish a large tribe of tens of thousands not far from you, Chief, you would absolutely not agree. If you, Chief, disagreed, even without using military force against us, simply ceasing trade relations, then all those people I painstakingly gathered, without oxen, without iron farm tools, without carts and boats, without enough cloth and animal hides for warmth, and crucially without salt. The thought alone is terrifying. At that point, with these people gathered together, their living standards would actually decline. Food would be scarce, clothing inadequate, transportation inconvenient. These factors alone would be enough to plunge the entire tribe into chaos. Various conflicts would erupt, internal strife would be constant, and the only outcome would be disintegration. Furthermore, the original chiefs of those smaller tribes might even take advantage of the chaos to kill me and take my place. Ultimately, after a major chaotic war, stronger tribes would redivide the population and territory, and our Ling tribe would simply vanish completely in the chaos. Tsk. After listening to Ling Yun's clear and logically sound analysis, you couldn't help muttering inwardly, "This guy, he really is talented." From his answer, you could tell he had indeed considered becoming king himself. But what was commendable was his clear-headed recognition of harsh reality and his foresight regarding the consequences of lacking Han tribe support. He understood that without the Han tribe's powerful deterrence, without the continuous influx of Han tribe resources and technology, even if he managed to gather people by luck, it would ultimately be short-lived, perhaps even bringing disaster upon himself. This guy has profound insight, clear thinking, and a keen judgment of the overall situation, you assessed inwardly. Among the current senior executives of the Han tribe, there probably aren't many who reach his level. Even Dashu and the Year, other governors judging solely by this vision and perspective, might not compare. Making him a governor is definitely more than adequate. However, you reconsidered. This kind of person also has great ambition. To use him, one must have the ability to keep him in check. But you were quite confident in yourself. In terms of knowledge, you were millennia ahead of him. In terms of cunning, you had at least been bombarded with information from modern society. In terms of prestige within the tribe, you were solidly at the godlike level, deeply respected. With your mind made up, you no longer hesitated. If handled well, this was absolutely an excellent opportunity for the Han tribe's leapfrog development. 50,000 people, more than the Han tribe's current total population. Absorbing all these people would be enough to establish 3 more prefectures. At this thought, you couldn't contain your excitement either. You stood up from the main seat, walked down to the floor of the hall, and pulled up Ling Yun, who was still bowing. Your request for your tribe to join, I agree. You patted his shoulder, your tone firm. The position of governor, I can also promise you. However, the Han tribe doesn't have an existing prefecture for you right now. You will have to pioneer a new prefecture, and you will preside over all its affairs and construction. As for the specific matters of recruiting population and settling the new tribespeople, we still need to sit down and discuss the details. Also, the location of the new prefecture certainly cannot remain in that marsh. The place is too limiting and unfavorable for long-term development. We'll discuss the location later. Right, and your name. Your tone shifted. Lin Shu of our Liuyang prefecture, Shu Da of Ruyang prefecture. I granted them surnames. Since you are also to become a governor, let me give you a name as well. You named yourself Ling Yun, which isn't bad. But the surname Ling we already have in the Han tribe. A grassland man named Ling Feng. Since you are not family, it's best not to use the same surname for now to avoid confusion. How about this? You pondered briefly. Let's use your character. Yun Cloud as the surname. Seeing your great aspirations, let's just call you Yunji. Cloud ambition. Aim high, soar like a cloud. This surname Yun is currently unique in our Han tribe. From now on, you shall establish the Yun lineage. You are the first ancestor of the Yun family. Ling Yun. Oh no, Yunji now. Hearing your words, he trembled slightly with excitement and immediately bowed deeply once more. Thank you, Chief, for bestowing this name. Yunji will henceforth dedicate himself wholeheartedly to serving the Chief, work diligently, and strive to add a new prefecture to our great Han tribe as soon as possible.